And you can unmute or drop in the chat your response to that question. If you have something that's coming up for you, I get it if you're a processor like me and it's going to take me a minute to think about it. Great, Ellen. Well, welcome. Ellen said in the chat that she is just learning to coach. So her goal is to make it welcoming for all. So I hope you leave today with some great ideas on how to make that happen. Okay, and Tracy's just saying this is a huge area of growth for me. So you're in the right place. We're so glad to have you. I think for all of us, it's kind of like a bit confusing. And so we're excited to not only have Emily, but we'll have a few other speakers this year to just help us kind of really wrap our minds around what does this look like and how do we create those inclusive environments. Hello. For those just joining us, we are answering the question, what specific strategies or tools do you use to create an inclusive and welcoming environment for all the individuals that you work with? Go ahead and unmute, or you can also drop it in the chat, your responses. Ooh, I love that. Is that Janie? For me, is the most important part is not making assumptions. So good. Okay, Jen, did we? Oh, I thought I lost you. And there you are. I'm going to go ahead and it is 11:02. So if you want to start with some opening slides.
Of course. Hopefully everyone is seeing the welcome page of my slideshow. So big welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on this Friday morning, afternoon, and on Veterans Day. So a big thank you to any of our veterans out there in the audience today. We greatly appreciate and are honored by you being with us. And welcome to everyone. A little quote by Sir Walter Scott to start off our November. And we've got some updates, not only from ICF High Country, but also ICF Global. All right, so we have a couple of board positions open. We have a chair and co-chair for our special events. So if that sounds, interesting to you, feel free to drop me an email and we can go into further detail on what that may entail. And happy to chat with anyone that would be curious and want to learn more. And then for ICF Global, we have a credentialing series that's been happening over several months now. It wrapped up actually this week on Tuesday, but the recordings are going to be in the learning portal. So basically, if you log into your account, you should be able to reach your learning portal from there and scroll around and find those credentialing series. It's been fantastic. They've covered a wide variety of topics. As we kick off November, you may have seen an election kind of ballot come out that will be open from the 1st to the 15th, and it is for the ICF Professional Coaching Global Board of Directors. That election is currently happening, so you should see a link for your personal ballot come directly to you from ICF Global. Tons of different events happening to improve your skills through the community of practices, and ICF Global has a number of community of practices that are fantastic and would highly recommend checking out. And I will also drop this presentation into our chat because I have hyperlinked things, so that way in your leisure time, you can check out some of these items for further information. Not only does the community of practices have a wide range of things, they're also looking for members to get involved. So that is a fantastic space. If there's something specific that you're looking for and want to get involved with like-minded coaches, great way to do it. Again, updating credentialing candidate guidelines is now available. So that basically is kind of a little workbook to an extent, as far as just updating your personal credentialing and how to do that. And they've got it broken down in ACC, PCC, and MCC. Converge 2023, that is on demand as far as the recordings. Converge just happened in August. And so they've got the recordings up and ready for viewing pleasure. And then from our DEIB world, we've got a fantastic partnership with a great DEIB coaching program. So if it's something that you're interested in specializing and going into, here's an opportunity from an educational standpoint from ICF Global to check out. And I'm going to hand it back over to Becky to introduce our fabulous speaker for today. Thank you so much, everyone.
Hello, hello. Well, thank you for joining us. We're super excited to have Emily here with us today. Emily earned her postmaster's degree and national certification in educational psychology from Brooklyn College. She's worked as a psychologist in the K-12 system before opening Heart Vision Coaching LLC in 2018. I just love that name. During the pandemic, Emily moved from New York City to Utah and joined the Utah Valley University as an academic success coach in 2021, where in addition to coaching, she teaches an orientation to DEI for university employees. Currently, Emily is serving a 3-year term for the Coaching and Higher Education Consortium as an executive board member and diversity committee chair, where she found Deep Dives, a DEI book club for coaches, as well as serving on the National DEI Committee for Academic Advisors. Off duty, Emily loves a handsome tuxedo cat named Boo, power walking to Beyonce, and harvesting veggies from her community garden. And we are so excited to have you. Thank you for joining us, Emily, and I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Becky. And thank you everyone for joining. And I do want to second, if anyone here is a military service member or a family to military service member, like, thank you so much. And we do want to recognize all of you today. I am going to be sharing this presentation, which means a lot of the time I don't really know how to navigate back to faces in the chat. So one thing I want to just invite right at the top of this session today is that this is communal. Like, this is all of us. I'm asking right now that all of us jump inside the conversation. And so with that, please feel free to utilize the chat if you're uncomfortable speaking. If you have a question or just have the urge, jump on in. By no means is this offensive to me, and I would really appreciate and require some participation today. So I just want to say that off the bat, if I'm not seeing you, please feel free to interrupt, because it's what it's all about today. Okay, with that, I'm going to just share this presentation. Okay, can I just get like a thumbs up if this looks okay to everyone? Yeah, thank you so much. All right, so today we do have a couple of objectives, things to walk away with. So one is just understand, what is DEI and why does this matter in coaching? I would also like us all to recognize what intersectionality is and increase our own self-awareness and self-reflection skills. In addition, we're going to talk about some cultural competence, some of the ethical considerations of coaching, and most importantly, I would just hope that we leave with a desire to do more. Well, let's see. There we go. Okay. This is me. Thank you, Becky, for the introduction. My personal LLC for coaching is called Heart Vision Coaching. I opened that in 2018, but I am a member of the Academic Standards coaching team at UVU here in Utah as well. Before we begin, I do want to recognize that when we're talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, we're in a space where there's current controversy in the United States. Today, I'm just inviting everyone to be open to this conversation. We're not here to debate. We're not here to talk politics, but we are here to learn and grow. So I'm going to operate today from a space that everyone is here with a desire to learn. And just everyone, if we can come, feel free to drop the day away. Take a deep breath, and just get present in this moment. Part of the agreements I want to create for today are just about creating a space of respect where we can reflect and we can learn, and we can listen from others. So respecting each other as equals, honoring everyone by creating the time and space for their contributions, staying curious about each other and the individual paths that have brought us together today. When we pace ourselves in conversation, we can create time for listening, thinking, and reflection. So I invite you to practice self-awareness. Be generous not only with each other, but also be mindful with your impact on others, regardless of your intent. Respecting confidentiality of what is shared in this space, what's said here stays here. And our conversation together, make it complex, challenging, or difficult. So invite, expect, and accept that we might not come to any kind of final decision or closure on any issue. But in the spirit of learning, growth, and cultivating some shared values as coaches, just an ongoing commitment to re-engaging at a later opportunity when it's a better time for you, when you're in a better emotional or mental space, you can always come back to this work. And then ultimately, no one knows everything, but together we know a lot. And so we can do so much by learning in community. Well, I want to begin by playing a game. So I'm going to navigate us away. And I would just like a thumbs up if you can see the new coaching. Is the game showing? Or are you still looking at the wheel on the presentation? Thumbs up. Okay, awesome. I'm going to ask for a volunteer. Is anybody willing to start us off by spinning the coaching wheel? Can I get like a hand raise on Zoom? Anyone? Anyone? Yeah, okay.
So how do you do it?
I'm going to spin the wheel and you're going to answer the question that comes up. If you need to pass, you can say pass. It's okay today.
Yeah.
All right. can you please share a moment when you gained a new perspective about someone from a different background?
Hmm. Okay, well, the first thought that comes to my mind is I worked in a shelter program for kids. And so hired people and hired a couple women along with some men and worked with those women for a year or so before I learned that they were gay. And of course, this was a long, long time ago. This is probably, gosh, in the 80s. So it was not the world it is today. But it was such a great introduction to a person who was different from me because I had already gotten to know them as a person.
Mm.
And I respected them and I loved them and I worked with them. And I think that helped in my growth and development around, recognizing people can look different from me. And it doesn't matter. I can still treat them as my colleague, my peer, my confidant, my friend. So I feel really fortunate for that experience.
That is so lovely. Thank you so much for playing today, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you for inviting it.
Can we get a next volunteer to take a question on the wheel? Okay, I saw a hand. Whose was it though? I'm flipping through. Becky, can you tell me whose hand is raised?
Julia.
All right, awesome. I'm gonna find you, Julia. All right, spinning the wheel for Julia.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay, great.
Will you please reflect on a time when you learned something valuable from a cultural misunderstanding?
Ooh. I have to, this is tricky. What comes to mind, I lived in France for a hot second as a young 21-year-old, having never left the country, and was there to tell people about my beliefs that were perhaps better than theirs at the time. And upon arriving in France, most of the people that we were speaking with and working with were low income. They needed assistance. They were also immigrants from another country. And I quickly learned that my, for lack of a better term, mission was not to share my beliefs with them, but to find alternative assistance for them so that they could take care of their families. And I learned the cultural aspect was such a huge part that I was not taught, but had to learn very quickly for my own personal belief of what I needed to do there. So not adding in my white person belief, but seeing the individual as just a human and not necessarily with a divide between countries. So I took a different approach in how I spent my time there in France.
Wow, powerful. Thanks so much, Julia.
Thank you.
I don't know if you guys can hear the sounds, but I'm just like living for these sounds right now. Janine, I saw your hand up. Would you be willing to be our next participant? Okay, awesome. I'm going to spin the wheel. Let's give it a go. All right. Janine, in what ways can coaches contribute to creating safe spaces for discussing sensitive topics related to identity?
So I guess it depends on whether you're thinking of leading such a safe space or whether just participating. So I've mostly been a participant. And from that point of view, I think it's just the willingness to ask questions that maybe some folks might find, oh my goodness, you can't ask that. That might be sensitive. I mean, if you ask it in a nice way and with respect and with genuine interest, you can learn a lot from another person. And other people often are really reluctant to do that. I mean, I'm often reluctant to do it too, but I think we can only really learn from each other if we are willing to have, you know, somewhat deep conversations. And if you ask a somewhat deep question, again, in a safe, respectful, and all those things ways, because there's lots of ways you can do it, a lot of people are actually very happy to share their experience. I mean, this is, again, you don't want to ask somebody who has already been tokenized about their experience in that field, because that they're having to do it all over again. But to just ask sort of things that might not be commonly discussed, whether it's from somebody like, say, a student of mine who might not be neurotypical, what would be most useful to them in certain conversations. I mean, that's normally a one-on-one conversation, but still things that, you know, you don't want to make assumptions about another person if you can get the real deal, the real information, because really nobody knows the other person like they know themselves. I mean, that's the premise of coaching. And I think this can really, really go far when it comes to people who are in some aspect or the other different from ourselves, I mean.
Absolutely. This is such a powerful call, Jenny. Like, be courageous in your coaching. Say what you mean. Go for the hard thing. Like, because that is obviously like such a gift to our client to build that container that you're talking about. You're like, obviously I'm doing the things. I'm creating the walls of the conversation. So my client knows, like, I'm not putting them on the spot, right? But in that moment, I'm willing to call them in this way and say a really hard thing, say something really sensitive, because it can be that powerful moment for that person. And that is just wonderful. Okay, I think we have time for like one more, then I'm going to move us forward. Can I get a volunteer, please?
I'll go again,
Julie?
Emily.
Okay, yeah, go on in. We'll do it.
And I apologize. I'm not on camera because I'm sick and in my jammies still and am off work. So
Look at you being here, though. I mean, that's, come on, this is amazing. You
Right.
don't have any apologies to give. Okay, describe a time when you witnessed someone challenging a stereotype or bias effectively. They did a good job.
effectively. Meaning that their bias was correct? I'm not totally understanding the question.
I would say maybe you saw somebody recognize a stereotype or recognize a bias and was courageous in that moment and dealt with it in a way that it ended up being a positive outcome. So maybe they recognize, like, hey, you said this and that was, maybe not. Do you want to try again? Have you seen somebody, maybe make that correction to a stereotype in a way that actually worked?
Okay. I work in HR for an ambulance company, and there's a very big divide between the field staff and the administrative staff. In the sense of like, oh, well, you're in the office and you're more pretentious, or you don't understand everything that we go through, kind of thing, which in some respect is true. I am not an EMT on an ambulance experiencing, high intense calls or medical emergencies. So with that being said, part of my role in HR is to bring that awareness that we have a complete understanding of everything that they're experiencing. And I'm trying to formulate this. A lot of the time I will bring to attention, hey, we may not have the entire story. So let's go back and do some research before we're criticizing why perhaps this EMT didn't complete XYZ. Another thing that's coming to mind is we have one manager who is a lesbian in a committed relationship, considering if she is transgender, and it's not a topic that the EMS system really talks about. So when we get new EMTs that need to be placed with a manager who may potentially be attracted to the same sex, the managers will just assume that that person should be placed with the other person that is also gay so that they are paired together. And I have started to have the conversation of, one, we can't make that assumption. And two, we also need to not just silo those individuals all together as if they are, they don't belong with the other part of our team or have you. But we need all managers to be aware of how to appropriately approach those individuals, especially if there's controversy or comments going on. And that was received really well in that I think it was an unbiased, or excuse me, a bias that they were unconscious of. And when it was brought to their attention, they realized, oh, you're right, we are sending everyone down to that manager. Thank you for pointing it out. And so we've been talking a lot about in my corporation, noticing our biases that are unconscious. So yeah, I think that was an effective way. Does that answer the question? I feel like I went around.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, what a beautiful workplace demonstration. We're just like speaking out and being like, hey, it kind of looks like you're pushing all these people to the corner together. Like,
right.
Is this what we want to be doing? Like, is this the look we're going for? And people can hear it and see that. And just, wow, what a great moment of advocacy. And thank you to everybody who, shared in our game today. I'm going to just navigate us back to the presentation. Okay, so what I want to kind of bring up and transition us forward into is something called building theory. And I heard this from a creator online who goes by Seeing Color. Oh my goodness, okay. So in building theory, we're looking at a skyscraper, and the people who are hanging out in the lobby are the majority. They're the default group. They can come in real easy. They can go out to the outside world real easy. This is our majority population. People in minority or disadvantaged groups, they're starting on these upper levels, 50 to 90. Why? Because their knowledge base level comes from their lived experience, education, and culture. That's including everything from systems like government and school to your individual experience of the family that you were born into, to the bias of like cultural expectations that Julia really did a great job kind of demonstrating for us just barely. And so when we're looking at this, okay, people in the lobby, main group, let's talk about Americans. This is an easy group for us to think about. Maybe mainstream Americans, right? They're able to go in and out lobby, first floor. It's really easy for them to navigate from the building to the world. People who are themselves immigrants to the country from another country, these may be the people starting at level 90 if mainstream Americans are in the lobby. So for them to come down, it's going to take, right, a stretch. There's an effort. There is like a feeling of separation there. Or for you, if you're a mainstream American in the lobby, right, you have to do, right, there's a disconnect there for understanding. You're not able to just talk in conversation. In this building, you can only take the stairs down. So anyone at an upper level, if they want to come to the lobby, they have to use the stairs. But anybody in the building can ride the elevator up. So if you want to make communication, right, if you're in the lobby, you could take the elevator up, like meet someone halfway. But if someone needs to come down, they got to come all the way down. They got to take the stairs. It is a huge effort. And so in this, the elevator is the metaphor for learning, for empathy, education, and expanding awareness, right? Okay. So if we're trying to understand our client, we have two options. We can shout up the elevator shaft, hey, I need you to come down here and explain this to me because I can't help you. I can't really see you. You're too high up. You're far away from where I'm at. Come down here and let's talk. Okay. Or you can do your own education. You can jump in the elevator and say, hey, it's pretty far for me to get to level 90, but let me meet you at 75. Okay, I'm going to grow. I'm going to learn. I'm going to do something to lift myself up. So it's easier for us to communicate and it's easier for us to share. Now, people in the lobby, they could go to the basement. And in this model, the basement is a metaphor for people, institutions, situations that are not interested in having a conversation with people from the upper levels. So as someone, when you are in the majority group or you're in that main population, it would be your job in this example to go to the basement and maybe do that liaison work on behalf of somebody. This is showing up like an advocate, right? This is showing up as seeing the bias that's going on and being willing to communicate it into that space of unawareness. Hey, what do you think? It is too much to ask somebody from level 90 to go to the basement and say, hey, I know you don't even know I exist, but please, can we talk? So it is our job to take on that piece of advocacy. And so in building theory, we're talking about how laborious it is to be from a marginalized group and teach and explain to other people how harmful that oppression is. And someone in the earlier conversation did kind of mention like, I'm not going to ask this person to like explain their pain to me. And that is beautiful and really what we're talking about today. It is so much easier for us to take ownership of educating ourselves, exposing ourselves to new ideas, people, and cultures. Like we can really raise our awareness, raise our level of education. And there are so many tools and resources on diverse topics now. There are so many creators on social media who are creating this content with the desire to educate other people, right? It's not, you're not stealing this information, right? It's not like somehow harmful, but there's so much out there to kind of learn about people who are different from you in order to increase that awareness. And truly, this work starts with us and our own awareness of ourselves and where we are on our journey. I did include today something that we're totally not going to touch or talk about in this presentation, but there is a Google Drive folder that everyone participating will have access to. And in it, there's like a small worksheet workbook with a couple of resources so that you can, assess your own level of where to begin and move forward. There are some different reflective activities looking at, your personal identity, your social identities, and also some links to go to some pretty standard diversity like learning modules. So one is the Harvard Implicit Bias Review. This really shows you how you can look at, where are those areas I'm not really aware of having some bias. You could seek out more education in those areas. And the other is the American Psychological Association, like diverse language guide. So sometimes we say words and like, we don't realize that it may carry a meaning that like we're not intending, or it's from another part of the country. It's a cool like guide that kind of helps you understand, what am I saying? How am I saying it? I loved in our earlier discussion, the kind of like, say what you mean, go in for the real question. Self-awareness is always going to be that first step in being a kind and welcoming person to people who are different from you, because all of the time we can have great intentions, but come across in a way that we are not intending to, causing impact on that other person. All right. The good news is that coaching and DEI, I would argue, is inclusive by nature. So universal design is a concept that comes out of the 1960s American Disabilities Act laws, okay? Universal design, when we're thinking about it in a classical way, is like having curb cuts in the sidewalk or having sliding doors at the grocery store. Like, yes, this helps people with mobility issues, but it also helps like people with carriages and strollers or people with, transportation needs, things like that. And so we would say that rather than having special accommodation for special needs, we should just start designing things for all people to be included and access them. And what's great about working under the ICF model is that it is inclusive by design. It's an international model. It is built for people to enter it at whatever level is appropriate for them and to meet them where they are. So I would argue if you are being an ethical ICF coach, you are doing DEI in your personal practice. And of course, we can always increase our ability to, try harder or have more awareness or have more goal-oriented outcomes when it comes to DEI. But essentially, I want everyone to feel relaxed and at ease because by nature, coaching is doing a lot of this. And here's some of the core competencies that show it. And I wonder if anyone has any comment at this time or making any connections that they would want to share aloud about understanding that these core competencies by their very nature is inviting this work.
I have a question.
Yes.
So I work for a coaching company and we coach people who've been laid off.
Okay.
And so these are companies across the US, and I would say maybe a third of my clients are of East Indian descent. They're from India or their families are from India. And I get a fair number of Asian clients. And so when I see this, it says is sensitive to clients' identity, environment, experience, values. I'm reading that. I think pretty concretely, and I'm thinking, okay, how do I do that? I don't, unless, like, how does one be sensitive? Do you know what I mean? I mean, do I ask questions? Do I just listen more deeply? Do I try to notice things that I wouldn't normally notice? That would, it'd be helpful for me if there was any kind of additional information about how do you become more sensitive if you don't have information. Like I don't have information about their cultural norms or how they speak that might be different than the way I speak. And sometimes I want to say, they're applying for jobs in the US. We speak, we speak English with a US accent, and it's sometimes often difficult to understand them. And I want to say it'd be helpful for you to slow down when you're speaking and pause. But I wonder, is that being insensitive? I mean, I get, kind of caught up, like, how sensitive should I be and how real should I be? And so anything you can add to that would be great.
Sure. Thanks, Tracy. I think, I think this is why this work gets sticky because what level of sensitivity is appropriate, how deep is appropriate, what is the client asking for is, I think, always such a great default in coaching, right? What does the client want to work on? Which problem does the client identify, right? And kind of taking their lead. And I actually hope that the next couple of slides is going to introduce some of those things of like, what am I being sensitive to? How can I increase sensitivity? I'm hoping to really kind of address that as we move into the next couple of slides about intersectionality. So hopefully that, but if not, Tracy, by all means, please, let's pick this question up again throughout the presentation. Any other thoughts, or anyone else feel called to just comment or speak on coaching in general as an inclusive measure? Yeah, Mariana.
This is kind of more in response to Tracy, but even if, you kind of mentioned certain regions or potential cultural backgrounds that you kind of know, like, hey, this is my population. And that's where that education piece and that seeking out knowledge piece, I think, comes into play, right? Where, yeah, you might not be given pamphlets. Ellen said that they used to work with a group that was focused on Asia and India, and they were given pamphlets that were like educational about differences between the different cultures. So it may be one of those things where it's like, you need to seek it out and share it with others, right? If no one else is doing that work, maybe that's what Tracy can do, right? So anyway, just throwing that out there.
Love the call to action. Yeah, great. Any final words that anyone wants to share? Okay, wonderful. Let's jump in.
Oh, I was
What
just,
are oh yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I was
Hannah.
just going to say on that last comment, what's coming to mind is really paying attention to using your client's language and reflecting. If you are unfamiliar with their language and their culture and their community, really listening for the words they're using, and so that you are building that relationship and getting into greater understanding, but also staying within their world.
Great call. Thank you so much for bringing that in. I mean,
I have a comment, sorry to
yes.
add.
Yeah, Julia.
What's coming to mind for me is that transparency of maybe saying, like reflecting back, what I'm hearing you say is da 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 da. Am I understanding you correctly? Are we on the same page? And, opening up that kind of vulnerability of, I just want to make sure I'm on the same page. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, yeah, I can reflect in my own coaching, and I can recognize times where pausing and checking for that understanding is so valuable to the client in that moment, because it might not be pushing them forward, but they're feeling really seen, really validated by that check-in in that moment. All right. Let's get into it. So we're talking about essentially diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is what most of the time you see diversity programming listed as. Sometimes you see the letters jumbled up as alphabet soup. Sometimes you see the letter B in there for belonging. But essentially, let's get clear on what we're even talking about with this stuff. These definitions I brought today come from the Gallup Corporation. I really love the work that they do with research and polling. I feel like it's a really nice counterpart to ICF because they too have a global focus. And so I've kind of leaned on their definitions today. So diversity are the traits and characteristics that make people unique. Equity is the fair treatment, access, and advancement for each person. And inclusion is an environment that makes people feel welcome, respected, and valued. So diversity. This literally comes from diversus in Latin, which just means various. Now, in the past 3 years, a lot of diversity, right, has been really like sanctioned into some very specific categories dealing with race, ethnicity, political views, but it absolutely encompasses all of the different aspects of humanity, including your gender, your age, the language you speak, the diagnoses that you have, your physical abilities, traditions, and culture. It is much, much bigger than our physical appearance or how we show up, looking every day. And we carry so many different parts of us. I was in therapy yesterday, and my therapist is like, well, you're saying like one part of you is feeling like this, and like the other part of you is feeling like this, but then like one part of you is feeling like this. And I was like, I need to remember this when I talk about intersectionality tomorrow, because essentially we do have these different parts that overlap, and one part of us is saying this and another part of us is saying this. And when we stop to pause and identify each of these pieces and how they relate to one another, how when they work in dynamics together it changes things, how we cannot even separate, right, this part from that part, even though we can talk about it in this way. Intersectionality is how we really start to say, how do we view ourselves? How do we view people in their fullness, in their humanity? This term comes from Kimberly Crenshaw, who's this really cool legal scholar in the late 80s. And she recognizes that individuals have multiple aspects of identity. They're intersecting, they're overlapping, and these create complex and unique experiences for people. So the idea is that all these different aspects, right, they can't be pulled apart. They are always with one another, influencing one another. I am always my gender and my age and my race and my level of education. And those things all are dancing together. So I would like to kind of put us together in a case study. I'm not going to do breakout rooms. I want everybody all in on this one. But to begin, I just wonder if someone will be willing again to volunteer for my question. When were you first aware that you belonged to a group? And what was that group? Floor is open. Just unmute.
Well, I would say my first group was softball.
When did you join softball?
So I think that was in, I don't know, 5th grade or 6th grade, somewhere around there. where it just felt like, okay, these are my people, right? Because
Oh,
I've
okay.
always actually, even after I left that group, I've always been a part of lots of groups.
Mm,
So
okay.
it's just been kind of a little bit different for me, but
So you're feeling that belonging really came through in softball, and you're like, oh, this is me. Who else? I saw a couple of their hands raised.
I'll go. It's Mariana. Hi.
Hi, Mariana.
I think Janine raised their hand after me.
Okay.
So for me, it was definitely as a youth, I mean, little, I'm talking 4 or 5 years old, probably. My parents are from Poland. They're very Catholic. And and I'm from Grand Rapids, Michigan, West Michigan, which is either very Catholic or Christian Reformed. So those were kind of very predominant faiths in that region. And so for me, like we went to church every week. And then I ended up going to a Catholic private school for 10 years, starting at age
Wow.
4. And so I knew pretty early on, like, I belong to this faith, this group. This is part of my identity at that time. It's not anymore, but it
Absolutely.
was, so it didn't
whole
feel
world.
the same way, like, yeah, it didn't feel the same way as Becky, where Becky's was like, these are my
Yeah.
people, right?
Mm,
It was something that was like assigned to me and my
uh-huh.
identity. So it was different.
Totally. Thank you for that perspective. Janine.
So for me, it was a little bit belonging to a group by not belonging to the other one. When I was, my parents are diplomats, Swiss diplomats, or they were before they retired. And so we moved around a lot. And when I was in middle school, we ended up in Egypt. And the division of basically have and have nots was extremely stark
Wow.
there.
Gee.
And it was just so obvious, even to my probably fairly self-absorbed little middle school self, that I was just in a position of supreme privilege. I mean, just the things I could do, could afford, the contrast with the people who came to the house to clean the house. I mean, it was so obvious. By not being part of them, I became part of, well, back then I thought of it as the cream of the cream. Now I think of it as the really spoiled people who don't appreciate what they have, but fundamentally the super privileged. And that has carried through all my life in just sort of the, oh, wow, there's really a big difference.
I can only imagine how that shaped your worldview for your age at that time. What an experience. Thank you for sharing. And Ellen, I want to bounce to you next as well.
The first time I remember being part of a group was in 3rd grade, where it was when I first started being in the accelerated students. And I even remember the time when I somehow wasn't in that, and just how crushing that was.
Absolutely. I think that's one of mine as well. It's kind of like in school, that separation that can happen where we're all the same, and then all of a sudden we're not, and we're divided into learning levels, and we are aware all of a sudden of being in different groups. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. This is deep stuff. I mean, this is literally what makes us who we are, and not only us, but our clients are doing this every day. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of a coaching case study. So your client, or our client, we're doing this all together, is a mid-level manager in a tech company. The client is middle-aged, African-American woman, a single parent of 2 young children, one of whom has a disability. The client is dedicated to her career, but faces challenges balancing work responsibility and the caregiving responsibilities. Some things about our client. She has been struggling to keep up with job demands due to caregiving responsibilities of her child, her special needs child. She is facing microaggressions at work that are both in relation to gender and race. She is feeling overwhelmed and isolated, and there are limited support systems available just in the world for parents of single parents of children with disabilities. So we may all experience the same workplace, but that does not mean that we're experiencing workplace in the same way. let's look at our clients' intersectionality. We're not going to go too much into like debriefing this because this is not a client that we're really working with, but as a way to begin piecing together a few things, you can reference the details here in the corner, but how can these intersecting identities be impacting her experience, whether it's her challenge or her opportunity?
I'll go. This is Lizzie. Um, this is kind of close to home for me. I was in the tech industry. I was a woman. I was not Black, of course, but I experienced a lot of these challenges as a woman in male-dominated society. So from the get-go, that would have been, it said that she was being, gender issues there and stuff like that. But I've seen it firsthand that a woman in a male-dominated workplace has challenges already, and that overlaps to childcare, to pretty much everything. So just throwing that out there.
Thank you so much, Lizzie. Who else would like to add their observations about these different levels of identity?
I'll go. It's Mariana.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Everything that I'm hearing here really can kind of come back to not having a support system in multiple areas of her life, right? Like if she's experiencing microaggressions at work, let alone already, a little bit of a class system at work with being a mid-level manager, right? So she can't like befriend everyone. So she's struggling in so many ways. And boy, would this person do so much better. So I guess the challenge is lack of support system in many different aspects of life. So the opportunity is to somehow build that out. But of course, we don't have time to coach her around that. But that's like what I'm seeing. Just it feels, you have the word isolated in there, right? That isolation and loneliness is really standing out for me.
Absolutely. It's painful to hear those words reflected out in this, even though it's made up, right? Like it really is so real. Let's move into the second question. How can you, as her coach, ensure that this experience of coaching is personalized and taking into the different levels and layers of challenge that she's facing?
I'll go.
Please.
So yeah, this would be overwhelming for a coach if all of this came out in your first session. But I'm reminded that, as a coach, it's not our job to fix all these things in her life. It is really to listen deeply and just be sensitive and reflect what you hear her saying and empathize. I think empathy is first and foremost. And then to start to dig into, what do you think is the area you'd most like to lift up some, what would have the most impact in terms of where you want to go forward, and really let her drive it, always being aware and maybe looking for opportunities to bring in, as Mariana said, this, we know from the research how debilitating isolation is, and to look for opportunities to encourage, offer observations around how she might take advantage or consider looking at ways to, build up certain areas of her life that could then help with, addressing some of these other areas.
Tracy, beautiful best practice. I mean, coming on in strong with don't fix all her problems for her, or even try to, but come hard with empathy. Listen. If anything, I'm hearing in that, scenario is that she's isolated, struggling, that listening, that open ear, that trust that she knows what's best for her, not me telling her how to fix her problems. I mean, it really just sent chills down my arms because it's like, yeah, that is something in there speaking the truth to me about how you can be there for somebody that otherwise, I mean, they're overwhelmed, you'd be overwhelmed, but that doesn't mean we don't have the tools to sit in that moment and be, be there for that person saying, yes, this is huge and it's not too big for both of us. Where do we start? And that is so powerful. Let's just
Well,
keep
and
going. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I would just jump in there and say,
Please.
congratulations to her for getting a coach. Like,
Yes.
a lot of people are in this scenario and they don't have somebody that they can go to. So that support system begins with, okay, I'm here for you, and we're going to co-create a pathway forward. So like, calm her nervous system down of like, okay, and let's just start. Tell me the biggest thing. What's the biggest thing that we need to tackle as we move forward, and create that pathway forward to give her hope. And that she has time to meet with us. That would be another consideration as we're looking at this. So I have been a single mom of 3 children. So and in a manager HR role. So I get the whole, there's a lot to manage, but we can figure out ways and strategies that will work for you to help eliminate that extra stress and overwhelm.
Can I just jump in really quickly? On top of that, something you said, Becky, made me think about like even the flexibility of, you know, more ad hoc sessions instead of like this perfectly scheduled session, just because of her busy life, right? Little things like that could make a difference for a client like Susan. I'm naming her Susan. A client like Susan, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Mariana. That's a great piece for equity, access, you know, being willing to meet her. And wow, what a true show of support for someone who's feeling isolated. Like, to go on a limb and say, yeah, I'm going to try this coach. And this coach is like, pull up a chair. I'm right next to you. What do you need? You need flexibility. You got it. What, you know, how can we do this? Lovely, lovely support. What should the coach be considering in terms of client support, well-being, and challenges in the workplace? What can you stay mindful of as your client's kind of vulnerable with you?
Well, I think we need to go in understanding if she's already overwhelmed, her well-being is already being sacrificed somewhere, because we're really great at keeping commitments, keeping our children alive, and doing all the things that are required. But when it comes down to us, we're going to have a conversation of like, hey, how are you filling your own cup? How are you taking a minute? Which I get that even just going to coaching can be that huge support, just somebody to hear her out, to help her process, to maybe even reframe a few things, because I think a lot of times we're so far in the weeds that some of the challenges might be really being able to see the step back and be like, okay, I can handle this. I am resilient, and somebody to speak that into them, and to encourage the well-being piece for that. But I also think the challenges in the workplace, specific to the workplace, are the opportunities that she's likely not able to take on because she can't handle another thing. And so really kind of understanding that, and maybe seeing, okay, if we can get everything else organized, you know, then she would have some more opportunities that she'd be able to step into, or maybe she can take a few things off of her plate. But that's a whole long conversation of like, okay, what are we doing now? And is it necessary that everything that you're doing is what you absolutely must be doing? What does delegation look like?
Yes. Wow. What a difficult topic for just people, especially anyone who's a lot of responsibility and is willing to just, it's easier to take it on. I really appreciate this answer, because it's like, it's really easy to get caught up in action around work stuff. And like, yes, you're doing these things, good for you, but are you checking in? Are you ever feeling your own take? Like lifting up the individual. Because in coaching, we do get so much about action plans and what have you done and what's working and what's not working, that as a coach, you can still be considerate of the person. And maybe if they're not, you know, in that session, like they don't want to focus on themselves, you can still check in, show concern, show empathy, and show that, yes, while the challenge is important, like what's really important is the person having that challenge. And I really appreciate that. Yes, Hannah.
And I would just add to Becky's comment from a real experience with a client conversation. who's in a similar situation of
Mm.
overwhelm. And she mentioned she cannot bubble bath her way out of the situation.
Oh my
And
gosh, I love that.
the amount of advice that people give her. And so getting just really clear on what she wants out of coaching and what would support her. And for her, she was really saying, I just want somebody who will listen to me and like encourage me and you know, cheer me on and tell me that I'm capable of more. And
Wow.
you know, that's pretty powerful. So just being really having those deep conversations around what do you want out of this and how can I show support for you in a way that fills you up rather than the, you know, telling a person to go take a bubble bath, because that's clearly not going to help a lot of people in most situations in their life.
You know, I'm like imagining this coaching session, right? And like, it's like starts with this like offhanded comment, like of like, I can't bubble bath my way out of this. And like, you end up getting her to speak what she really wants.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's powerful.
Wow. I want to know I'm capable of more. Ooh, that's like coming from the belly. You know, like I just feel how true that is for anyone who's courageous enough to speak that out loud. And like what a powerful session. Thank you for that share. All right. So the diverse, you know, identities of our clients, put them in unique situations and challenges that often, right, can put them in different levels of access to resources, opportunities, you know, anything that we're trying to attain. I have a little graph here, equity versus equality. Does anyone want to give this a stab from the audience? I've talked plenty. And if not, I'm happy to take it. But I wonder if anyone would be willing to give this one a try. What is the difference? Jenny, love it. Thank you.
So the idea is equality would just mean you give everybody the same treatment, which a lot of people think of as fairness. But at the same time, it's not really fair if they already are starting from different levels, giving them the exact same treatment. As you can see, they have different heights. This is often referred to as, you know, being able to watch a soccer game over the fence or something. And you can see that the shortest person there can't see over. And that's probably they're symbolic of the person who has the least maybe social capital, privilege, whatever it is. And so in order for all of them to be able to achieve the same thing, they might need different levels of support to make it actually equitable as opposed to equal.
Beautiful. Everybody, round of applause. Let's throw up some emojis, please. That was well done, Janine. Mariana, additions, please.
Oh, I actually was going to mention that I've seen this as like the fence trying to watch the soccer or ball game or whatever. And I really like that metaphor. So, but then Janine said it, so I lowered my hand.
Excellent. So if you Google equity versus equality, yeah, you'll totally get this image of the game and how people can access it. I work in higher education, and sometimes we use a metaphor of glasses to talk about equity versus equality. So if one student in the classroom needs glasses, but all of the other students do not need glasses, is it fair to give that student glasses? Well, okay, right. Equal would mean everybody gets glasses of the same prescription, no matter what, because we don't want anyone to feel left out. But that's not helpful for them. In addition, it is not helpful for the person who needs glasses to sit and squint at the board and see if it's going to get better over time. Right? Like you could go for it, try. We need to make accommodation, and accommodation is just fine. And it is not difficult to make accommodation for people. And it is not expensive necessarily, right? To be flexible or show access or a willingness to come up with creative solutions to give people more of a chance. And maybe it's because of one of those identities that we discussed, right? Maybe it's because of multiple intersecting identities of minority status. But this person may need some lowering of the playing field or some accommodation to have that kind of equal access to the opportunity that's presented. But most of us do not coach at institutions, which I realize. So we are going to navigate away from my presentation, and we're going to go to the Jamboard link, Becky. So here there's going to be dropped in the chat a link to the Jamboard. I've got it up here on the screen as well.
Emily,
And
I can't see a Jamboard. Am I the only one who doesn't see Jamboard?
is it not sharing the Jamboard?
I can
No.
see practicing equality and
Yeah.
one-on-one
Or
coaching.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
no
can see the
Jamboard.
Okay.
slideshow still. So I think you just have to share it. Yeah, there you go.
There you
There it
go.
is.
Thank you
There it
very
is.
much. Thank
Yeah.
you very much. Okay, so you should have the access to join in this Jamboard in the chat soon. And I want to do group mind map idea building, throwing up ideas. How do we increase equity in our like one-to-one coaching practices, coaching with our clients? I have one example up. Access. Okay, we can increase access by offering sliding scale pricing options to people who need them. You know, do you have to do this? No, but it's an idea for how you might increase equity in your personal coaching. Let's see, are people able to edit? Yeah, they should be. Can anyone get in here and
There's
edit
no
or
link
add?
yet. There's no link yet.
There's no link yet. Becky, do you have the link for
Oh,
the
wait, there it
Jamboard?
is. It's there.
Oh, okay.
Just went in.
I love these jams. I love when they just start getting crazy. So some of the topics that I put out here are, you know, ideas for equity around cultural sensitivity or addressing systemic barriers. How can you advocate for your client? Yes, Julia.
The link popped up, just links to the website and how to join the.
Okay,
Oh,
I'll drop.
I'm now
There's-
reading it.
Yeah, there's a Jamboard link in that link.
I just had to read each word. Forgive me.
No worries, no worries.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, Emily, one more time, can you give us the instructions?
Yes, so we are mind mapping and brainstorming actions that we can take in our as individual coaches to increase equity for our clients. So there's just a couple of topic ideas, whether it's access or cultural sensitivity, or anything that you can think of that would make your coaching more equitable to different types of clients.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm looking at the Jamboard. I've never used one before, so I don't
Okay.
really know where to start.
Okay, sure. So there should be the ability to click on a sticky note in a menu on the far left. And when you click that, you can see mine just added up, popped up
Gotcha.
here.
Okay.
And you can write in, and then you can kind of drag and drop along here. Okay, so I have a new one I'm going to read out loud. Different types of offers to reach more people. So group coaching, one-to-one coaching, great idea. You know, group coaching, you can get more clients in for maybe a reduced rate. Maybe there's some kind of shared identity for your clients that they're there. Cool. Seek out and join DEI and cultural trainings. Yes. Educate yourself, right? It's that first metaphor of getting in the elevator and doing some work to kind of meet your clients, you know, minimize that gap so they don't feel like you're such a different person they have to really stretch to connect with. Payment plan options. Oh, that's great. So you could really pay over a period of time. You could have different options about how they're able to do that in a way that works better for their own pay scale. Flexibility on platforms, great. Phone, video, right? A couple of us in this room, I know, are ADHD coaches. Sometimes it's also flexibility for how your client's showing up. Can they be on a walk? Can they be like doing something? Do they have to be staring at you in the camera? You know, sometimes you could switch to a phone call or a walk and talk. Might be better for the needs of the day. Okay, loving this. Materials in different forms, whether it's audio, written. Addressing systemic barriers, don't have any here yet, right? But thinking about, you know, how do we advocate for our clients who are students, who may be having barrier issues, right? Whether it's getting access to finances or to education or to work opportunities. Lots of opportunity to help students understand how to be their best advocate, right? So helping people learn how to advocate for themselves. Love this. Using clear words and speaking slowly when your clients are potentially, language learners. I would say in addition to that, my background is as an educational psychologist. And so there are things like processing delays, verbal processing delays that we may want to be aware of, especially if we know our client has any kind of diagnosis or is medicated in any kind of way. They could be experiencing brain fog, memory issues, right? They may not have that recall. You may have to repeat things without ever getting an attitude about it, right? Because this is what your client needs. I do have lots of clients with memory challenges, TBI, and things like that. And so you get this information as many times as you want it. I'm not going to wield power over you and be withholding because I already told you this and I'm not feeling it today. I can't do that, right? I have to put my attitude aside and say, no problem. This is the information again and again and again. So I think repeating information is another way that you can be equitable in your coaching. Ensure that you've got diverse voices at your table. Absolutely. Flexible hours. So people who can't coach during normal hours could coach with you. I mean, this is wonderful. Just making sure people are clear on what coaching is and isn't, clarification around what you're talking about. This is great. We're all going to have access to this. So hopefully we can keep building on it, looking at it, or coming back to it for ideas about, there is a lot we can do just one-on-one with people. In fact, in some ways, it is easier to be flexible one-on-one with your individual client than to break the mold and change the model. And not that that's not a worthy cause, but, there is so much that we can do each day. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing the presentation. And we're going to hit inclusion. So we are kind of getting to the end of our DEI presentation. And we're going to end on inclusion today. So inclusion is an environment that is making people feel welcome, respected, and valued. And one of the ways that I think we can be inclusive as coaches or market ourselves as people with awareness of diversity and having inclusion practices in our coaching businesses is a lot of our own personal marketing and websites. Oh my goodness, I am unable to get control of this slideshow right now. Here we go. So I am just going to share quickly my own website, because at the bottom of my own website, I have put in place an activity. Well, something I'm going to have us do an activity around. So I just have a few things. And I do not have a perfect website, right? But I'm here to include things like ADHD, neurodiversity, diverse ages and backgrounds, right? A lot of the language that I've chosen is neutral, open, inviting. I've really tried to include diverse faces and talk about diverse topics on my webpage. And at the bottom of my homepage is both my mission and promise. So mission, I think we all know what mission statements are. The promise here that I have is really kind of, I guess, my personal code of ethics. So how did I get here? In 2017, I took a workshop from an online educator whose name is Andrea Renee. And the workshop that Andrea put on was called The Color of Wellness. And it was really talking about, this is 2017, so we're really in clean wellness culture, just the height of it. And she was really calling forward, of healers and helpers and wellness spaces, it's getting so whitewashed. And what are you doing to include more people? And what are you doing to have integrity around the mission of diversity in your personal business if you're in, this kind of a world? And so that really set me off and got me thinking. To be honest, I've really barely changed these since that time. I kind of did a deep dive here. So this is one thing I think you can absolutely do very easily on your LinkedIn, on your personal website, or somehow on a profile that you have that is advertising your coaching. So, okay, we're coming back. So inclusive language and communication, I think, is just a standard for coaches, right? You need to be open to coaching what of our clients are finding themselves drawn to you? And as has come up multiple times today, avoid making assumptions based on stereotypes. We can do that by being very thoughtful and mindful about the word choice that we're using when we are marketing ourselves, who we work with, how we work with people. So if you're on a computer, feel free to open up, a note, a Google Doc, your phone, get a pen and paper. But I'm actually going to put on a couple minutes timer, and let's just take a few minutes to start brainstorming ideas for an inclusive coaching mission statement. What is your mission as a coach? What are you hoping for? And what would you, promise your clients that you will do? So as you're getting your supplies out, I'm going to just take the time to read you mine, because if you want to use these words, by all means, feel free. No problem. And I do want to have time to share out what other people are writing at the end of a few minutes. So, mission statement. Heart Vision Coaching is committed to supporting individuals of diverse backgrounds deepen their self-understanding and overcome challenges in order to reach their highest potential and use their natural talents for the highest good. My mission as a coach is to lift up anyone and develop their talents to better mankind, right? I can't do all the work I wish I could do in the world, but I know I can help others do the work they're meant to do in the world. And I see that as my personal coaching impact. The promise, or like the personal ethics that I take on as a coach. I will continue to educate myself on issues of race, gender, politics, ethics, diagnoses, and best practices. I will continue my professional development as a coach by seeking out credential training and certification. I will respect your personal experience as it relates to your intersecting identities. You are resourceful, creative, and whole. 3, I will continue to acknowledge my own intersecting privileges and actively work toward challenging my own biases so that my clients feel safe. 4, I will continue to question the use of diagnostic criteria and formal assessment measures for racial bias and pathologizing human reactions to trauma. I was a psychologist, so this is really speaking to that world. 5, I will respect clients as the expert in their own experience and lives. I'll hold space to explore the client's agenda and not my own. And lastly, I will make outside referrals to community service providers when appropriate. I will not see clients for needs outside of my scope of practice. So with this, I'm going to put on a couple minutes timer and invite everybody to free write. I'm going to see if I can get a little music playing, and if not, it's okay. We just have 1 minute on the clock for anyone wrapping up their first ideas.
Emily, did you want us just to share those when the time is up, or to write them in the chat, or?
Ooh, well, I was just gonna say time. So how lovely. I think we're open for either. So just sharing out ideas. Like, are you willing to share some of what you were thinking or writing about?
Sure.
Great.
Let me just start by saying this is really hard for me. I'm a really slow thinker and writer.
Okay.
But okay, here it is. And I think I would say it's understated, but I think I mean, I was trying to get to the DEIB, whatever, but it's sort of embedded.
Sure.
So, to be a catalyst
Mm.
to help you, the client, rediscover. So it's not like this is a new thing. It's just finding it again
Mm.
and bring to life. So there's the action part. Those essential and unique parts of you that can lead you toward the life you desire. So pretty simple, but really it's the essential and unique, where I was trying to get to the diversity and the uniqueness. And so I don't know if that's a chicken way out.
Oh, I think that's lovely, Tracy. And in fact, I would say that your careful word choice is powerful and effective. Like when you take the time to find what is in your heart, it's speaking truth and
Oh.
clarity to me, at least. Like I really am like, can you put that in the chat? That's really nice, and other people should be able to see
Absolutely, I
that. Yeah, that's
find
very lovely. Thank you for starting us off there. Mariana.
Tracy, that was lovely. Truly,
you.
I agree with Emily. So I already kind of had like a coaching philosophy on my website in the About Me section. And so I'll kind of read off a part of what I had and what I might want to add now after this training. So coaching philosophy, I follow a holistic and strengths-based coaching paradigm. As a credentialed member of the ICF. I also follow the ICF Code of Ethics and Core Competencies, which I link to. It's important for me to create an environment of belonging, authenticity, open-mindedness, accessibility, and inclusion. Coaching is a collaborative effort, a partnership which requires non-judgment, trust, communication, and empathy. Every background, character, strength, and story is different. There is no one-size-fits-all approach. I do also mention that because I donate a little bit of my profits to a charity nonprofit in Utah. So I mentioned that, which I think hopefully brings my values across, you know, a little bit. And then kind of with what you said, Emily, about the kind of ongoing professional personal development, right? I do mention that though I'm trained and well-versed in neurodivergence and executive function challenges and strategies, I'm always learning and growing in this space. So I have those things there, but kind of reflecting on what I could add to it, you know, I could totally expand or change some of the language to include identity or intersection, and maybe even pull out compassion in there, because I don't have the word compassion, and that is my number one value. So yeah, so there's some things I think I'm going to tweak now that I think would maybe hit a little differently now versus when I first wrote this a few years back or whatever. So
Thanks for this share. And I'm really appreciating the opportunity for you to insert your values right up front for your client.
Yeah.
Like, we don't always do that. And as coaches, we're so trained to like erase. You know what I mean? Like, I'm barely a person with a personality because this is all about you right now. And so this is really a cool opportunity for you to just be so bold in your values. And like, we would hope like we are attracting the clients we're attracting because like we're going to work with them in positive and productive ways. And so having that kind of opportunity to just say, this is me, this is what I believe, this is what I'm here to do. I mean, coaches, if anyone, are just so enthusiastic about like that development of other. And I think this is such a beautiful way to have that high value driven work. And if that's who you are in integrity, I love that it can shine there. Yeah, thank you. Who else would like to share anything that they were thinking about or coming up with in regard to mission statements or promises on your website for inclusion?
I'll just echo what I put in the chat, that my business is built around helping people figure out their personal branding and business branding. So it dives a lot into identity, and my approach really centers around values and integrity and all this good stuff. So I already have a page that kind of goes in depth, but this has really inspired me to take a look at it with fresh eyes and build deeper into that, and take more of the, DEI lens to the page rather than just from my perspective of values. So thanks for inspiring me.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, how beautiful. You're like, I'm already valuing this stuff, and I know I can just like punch it to the next level with a little time, a little intention. You're not rewriting who you are. You're just like going back with fresh eyes. Like, that's really nice. And hopefully affirming for you too, like you're doing it.
Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you.
I would like to add, I'm very familiar with like the mission and value statement. I loved seeing your promises, because while the other things are really just kind of stuck in time, unless you go back and revise them, that promises was really really noteworthy in that these are things that you are challenging yourself to do. So you are creating kind of a pathway that you're saying, I'm going to tread here. And I really loved the promises you wrote, because you're challenging yourself, you're making yourself a better coach, and that's so important. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you so much.
I agree, Joey. Like that, I loved that part. And I meant to mention that when I was sharing my stuff. Like, I think I do want to kind of have this little, like you said, Emily, it's almost like a little code of ethics, right? And what I think is really cool about that is that is going to cultivate that trust and safety right off the bat, because you're sharing that personal code of ethics and coaching code of ethics with the clients before they even start working with you, and they're going to see it in action. And that's like a really great way of modeling having that kind of personal code of ethics and values that they can then develop, as a part of their coaching partnership. So I agree with Joey. That was one of my favorite parts of what you shared.
Thank you so much for that feedback. I mean, I'll play devil's advocate too, right? Like, it's just important for me to think that if clients are not aligned with my thinking, they should know that right away. I don't want them to get into an uncomfortable situation or conversation with me, especially if we get to a place where money is involved. And then it's like, oh my gosh, there's actually a huge reason why like I'm not comfortable with you. I want people to know where I stand, like out the gate, if they're contacting me for coaching. So yeah, I think it does work on both sides. Tracy.
Yeah, I loved, Marianne, what you read about getting into the detail, whereas I was very generic. And I thought it would be great to be able to do something like that, but where I get a little concerned or just hesitant, I guess is a better word, is I'm not an expert, and I don't feel like I know that much about DEI, and I haven't done a lot of research, and I feel very naive in the area. And so that would make me hesitant to say I'm DEI on my website. And so then the question becomes, when are you good enough to put something like that on your website, Any thoughts?
Yeah, Mariana, just say it. Just
Can I speak to that? So
Absolutely.
I'm technically, as president-elect of this chapter, I'm technically also the DEIB leader of the chapter. And one of the things that I've really tried to lean into is cultural humility rather than cultural competence. And so even what you just said now, Tracy, is being culturally humble, right? Being aware that you don't know what you don't know, and that you're willing to grow and you're willing to learn. So even if you utilize that kind of language, right, that still doesn't commit you to like, I'm this DEIB expert, but it showcases that you are in that growth mindset when it comes to these topics, you know? So yeah, leaning more into cultural humility rather than full competence.
Thank you.
Love that language. Thank you for that share. So we're really like at time. I really want to be respectful of time, but like this is not about being perfect. This is not about being right. It's just about showing that you are committed to engaging and keep trying. And that is what matters to people. That when you say like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm going to try better, that they believe you. That's when you're doing DEI right, I think. It's as long as people believe what you say. You know, when you're not playing two sides on people, when you're not siloing people away and saying something at the other side of your mouth, like when you speak or when you write your statements, right, and you show up in integrity and you get it wrong and you say, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, but like, can we talk later? Because like, I do want to revisit this when my emotions aren't so strong. This is when people are like, okay, you're one of the good ones. You're good, right? You're doing the work, as some people will call it, because it's just that continual commitment to change. So I was hoping we were going to get to like coaching action plans where we're talking about the takeaways and things. If people do have extra time or want to stay on, I'd be happy. I do have some extra time, but I want to say thank you so much. The workbook and the slides here are all available to everyone in the Google Drive folder. So please feel free to check those things out. I made them for you, and you can contact me anyway. I'm not as good on LinkedIn, but I had a conversation today with Becky. I'm going to try my best to do better at LinkedIn. And yeah, I'm so appreciative of this opportunity, of everyone's participation. I really relied on you, and I'm just so thankful for this rich conversation we had today.
Thank you so much, Emily. Round of applause, everybody. Thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for the great conversation. This is an area that can be so misunderstood and not, just misunderstood, I guess would be the good word for it, and complex. And so thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your expertise, Emily. And I have dropped in the chat the survey for today, because in order to receive your continuing education credits, you need to complete that survey. And coming up next month will be our mixer for the end of the year. I don't know, Mariana and I are going to bring the fun. She's probably more fun, but it will be fun. So on the survey that you guys completed for our planning for this year, you said, hey, I want to get to know some more people. And so this is the event you'll want to be at. So make sure to mark your calendars, second Friday of the month. Come for the networking mixer and fun, whatever that's going to be. We don't know yet. And thank you all for joining us.
I heard there might be a black and white tuxedo cat. No cat?
Ellen wants to see the cat. Ellen wants to see Blue.
She's not leaving without.
He's been trying to claw down the door this whole time. You're absolutely.
Thank you so much, Becky.
Nice
Thank
to
you,
see you.
Emily.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, everyone.
Have a fabulous weekend.
Thank you.
You're seeing all the thank yous, Emily, and the
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at the chat because I haven't got to see it this whole time.
oh yeah.